There's two last questions I'd like to ask you, but you did mention you'd like to tell us a little about your visual impairment.
So I was born visually impaired, so I have aniridia, coloboma, nystagmus and glaucoma. So aniridia is where you take in too much light. I don't have the coloured part of my eye, so it's like all my eye is kind of exposed. If you take off the coloured part of your eye, whether it's green, blue or brown, you take light through the pupil, which is the centre of the eye. But if you take off all that coloured part, then your eye then is all black, and then all light would go through all your eyes. So it's like an open camera lens. So that's why like I squint a lot, and basically I take in a lot more light than you. So a lot of people think about blindness as in darkness, whereas with me, I just suffer too much from light. If you can imagine a car coming towards you with its full floodlights on, and that's shining into your eyes all the time, that type of dazzling sensation, that's what I get all the time. Like even these lights here in the room, if I look at the lights, there's all rays coming out of the lights. When I tell people this, they think I'm hallucinating. So that's the aniridia. Coloboma is a part missing of the eye, which is my iris. Nystagmus is shaking of the eyes. So basically there might be one step whereas I might see two, or vice versa. With that as well, I don't see depth. So to me, a lot of things look flat, whereas there might be depth there, a step there. And then the coloboma is too much pressure in the eye. So that's all since birth, and everybody in my family are visually impaired as well. For me, like, it has its limitations being visually impaired, but like, it's like a lot of people say to me, oh, like, how do you find being visually impaired? But like, I've never lived in a fully sighted world, so I can't fully compare it, because I've never been in a fully sighted world. And a lot of people also ask me about the World Marathon Challenge. Oh, that must have been really, really difficult. But for me, the World Marathon Challenge, doing 7 marathons, 7 continents, 7 days, wasn't even that difficult, because, and I don't say that arrogantly, but for me, like, my life has all been about being comfortable with being uncomfortable, because I experience so much adversity on a daily basis in terms of my disability, in terms of bullying, ignorant people, fighting for my rights, navigating the streets, if there's different building works, simple things of being in the supermarket and they changing the prices and making prices smaller, or changing layout, so all those things. So like, basically with the World Marathon Challenge there was a finish line. With my disability there's no finish line. So that's why I suppose and I suppose I was told that by the age of 21 I'd go totally blind. Now that hasn't happened. I use a white cane, I don't use a guide dog. Sometimes, like, if there's a stretch of road, I try and maybe have a small bit of independence and try and maybe go out and just run that stretch of road if I can, from maybe A to a B. But like, I can't go into races by myself. I can't drive. Like, I could sit here and list to you all the things I can't do, but I suppose I try not to focus on the things I can't do, because I think then that kind of makes me feel kind of too depressed in myself. And like, even with the World Marathon Challenge, whether you have vision impairment or not, at the end of the World Marathon Challenge, I was expecting to feel sad that it was over, because I had been preparing for that for a full year in advance. I was expecting it to be sad, but like, it's kind of like what you talk about, like athlete depression type of when an event is over. I was expecting sadness to come maybe in a week or a month or 3 months, but actually came the minute I went over the finish line. And when I went over the finish line, I put my head into my hands, and everybody thought I was kind of like crying with relief that it was all over, crying with gladness that I just got a Guinness World Record. But I was actually crying because to me then that was the end. But then I suppose John, who runs with me, who's my run coach and guide runner, he kind of said, Sinead, it's not the end, it's the end of this chapter. And then I suppose in that moment you don't really want to hear that, you just want to feel sad. But like, if there had been an 8 continent or an 8 marathon, I would have done that, because like, for me, like, you just got into that routine every day of doing that. So I believe though, like, with our goals in life, fear stops us from doing our goals.
Oftentimes. And that's why, if I may, that's why I find your story so fascinating. I think our viewers will too, because we all struggle with fear, and you struggle with fear, but you just get up every day and you overcome it in small ways or big ways.
I think fear contracts us, and fear makes us be smaller.
Okay.
And I think you should embrace fear, and when you embrace fear, that makes you bigger.
Okay.
So don't allow the fear contract you and be small,
Okay.
but to embrace it. And I suppose the 3 stages of what I try to do with fear is basically feel it, feel and acknowledge it, then face it, and then embrace it.
Lovely.
And so that's kind of how I try and do it. And it's about having courage. Courage has a ripple effect. Once you show courage, it ripples around, and then you kind of inspire others. So.
And that's exactly why you're, I believe, in exactly the right profession by being a professional speaker, because your story will empower others.
Yeah. Well, like I suppose for me, I have to kind of hold back. Like there was a time when I did a speech. I don't know, would you say it was an embarrassing moment or not? But I did do a speech, and there was a lot of summer interns there, right? And I knew that they had just been handed this by their parents. They didn't
handed
the opportunity to get in there.
Okay.
And through connections, through networking or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was doing audience participation, and this guy didn't want to really get up and do the audience participation. So having learnt about him, I had learnt that basically he had been given a lot of things all throughout life, and I was just thinking to myself, right, okay, you're fully sighted, you're sitting there, you're in a fantastic company, I'm asking you for 2 minutes to get up on stage to do a task. I am visually impaired, I ran on a treadmill for 12 solid hours. I'm asking you so like I suppose sometimes it annoys me when fully sighted people don't participate. But like when you're talking about being a professional speaker, you can't let that anger come across.
No.
So, but that in that speech, I think that was what. I don't really get angry during my speeches, but that was one speech where I got very angry, and I had to really have a poker face in that speech. So you learn.
Don't beat up your clients. Probably not a good idea.
No.
Anyway, so you know, I think that my career changed the moment I met a man on the train, which is this pivotal moment in my career and my life. Do you have one of those moments, one moment that everything hinged upon?
No, because I think that I have pivotal moments, all different moments that has struck me throughout my life, but no one moment that everything centres on it. Like, for example, there a few years ago, a very, very close friend of our family died, and like for me, again, it comes back to gratitude, realising that kind of don't sweat the small stuff. So that'd be something, and then even at 17
that's the point. That's the moment that
for
me
was the pendulum and the pendulum swing, and like I suppose just kind of getting back up, another pivotal moment for me was when in 2009, when I really worked hard to become a qualified solicitor, qualified in March 2009. In 2009, the crash happened in Ireland, and 1 month later, I was let go from my job.
Wow.
So I spent 7 years to get to that moment.
My goodness.
And then I was let go because of the fact that I was in the public sector, in the legal aid board, and anybody on a temporary contract couldn't have their contract renewed because of the embargo. So when you work up to that moment and then realise, okay, I'm fired now, or well, not fired, but you're let go from your job. So actually, and interlinked with that, a pivotal moment would be that when I didn't get that job, then I tried to get other ways to get a job as a solicitor, because I really badly wanted a job as a solicitor. So I went to the Law Reform Commission, got a voluntary internship with them, travelled up on the train, up and down for 6 months, got up every morning at 4 a.m, didn't get home until 11 at night. Did that Monday to Friday for 6 months. That was in 2011 or 2010. 2011 I was in the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform in Dublin. 2012 I was doing a lot of voluntary work, And also in 2012, I got a job as a solicitor.
Okay.
And I actually always thought in my head, if I get a job as a solicitor on South Mall in Cork,
Yeah,
I have made it,
yeah.
right? So I had this so much built up in my head. It was kind of like, oh, if I win the lotto, I'll be happy. And I got this job as a solicitor on South Mall in Cork. And then I kind of said, is this it? And it didn't actually, I had built it up so much in my head to be something, I was bored by it.
It was a
And
letdown, huh?
yeah, I had built it, so I'm not like, no disrespect to lawyers out there,
Course.
but like, I didn't feel fulfilled. So again, that was a pivotal moment for me to realise that sometimes we can build so much up in our own heads about happiness, and that when we get to it, then when it doesn't turn out, so why not just be happy for today? Because you don't know if you have happiness for tomorrow.
Yeah, well said, well said. But I also think the universe, if I may say, had different plans for you anyway.
Yeah,
so
maybe.
I think, I think having Dr. Sinead Kane hidden in the back of an office somewhere, rooting through files, I don't think would serve the world very well. Anyway, what's next? If
What's
I may
next?
ask, what's next? What's your 2020 vision? What's
Well,
the
I
big
don't know.
plan?
I think I'm the type of individual. I don't know. Will I be as a speaker this time next year? Because not because of being a bad speaker, but because of the fact that, like, I get bored very easily, and I like being challenged.
Okay.
So I like to try and challenge myself in different ways. So you never know. Maybe politics.
Okay.
You never know. We'll see how the speaking goes. You never know. I might go back to being a solicitor.
Sure.
Again, I'm not quite sure. And you never know. There might be a book in me.
Whoa.
Might kind of start spending
heard it here
time.
first, folks.
Yeah, I might start spending time on a book. Like so,
Okay.
because I suppose for me, if I am to do a book, I want to make sure that the knowledge is there, the proper knowledge for people. So kind of watch space. Sure, if any of your listeners feel that they have an opening of somewhere, they can send their queries to me, and sure, I can consider it.
Fabulous. Yeah, we'll give all the details there for everybody.
I think as well, like what I also want to do is do more travelling as well, learn about more different cultures, etc. And I want to do that through racing.
Fantastic. Well, I've no doubt there's a book in you, and I'd say the problem is it's not just one book. I think there are many books in Sinead Kane. You've lived so many lives already, and many more to come. So, Dr. Sinead Kane, it's been
Thanks
an
very
absolute
much.
pleasure. Thank you for joining
Thanks.
us here today.
And I give you this brochure there.
Wonderful.
It's more
Thank you.
about
Wonderful.
myself.
Folks,
very
there you have it. Dr. Sinead Kane. We'll give you all the details at the bottom of the blog. So once again, thank you, Dr. Sinead Kane.
Thank you.
An absolute
Thanks.
pleasure. And if I may just thank you all for joining me for this week's Coffee with Colm. Hope and trust as ever you got something from it. And my very best on your behalf to Sinead in her future endeavours. See you here again sometime soon. Take care. Bye for now. Would you like to feature in a Coffee with Colm interview? To be able to use this very powerful medium to tell your story, then send us an email to colm@colmobrien.motivation.com.